Hello, everyone, and welcome. Boy, I don't know. I'm not sure about the angle on that camera, actually, now that I'm looking at it. Bear with me for just one moment. Let me try to fix that. A little better. So, can you guys hear me, first of all? Just want to be certain about that. First question I always ask to make certain that I am audible. Anybody who is on the questions and answers, please just let me know. Thanks, M2. I do appreciate it. So, welcome to yet another live stream that we have going on. And it was a poll that we took. And I actually kept it going right up to the point that I went live just to see what the results would be. The subject of the poll is actually kind of related to the video that I just did, simply because I mean, I'd love to move on from where I was with all that, but at the same time, I think it's good for us as space enthusiasts, as folks who are advocating the colonization of Mars, to take a long, hard look at, what we're advocating, what we believe in, and how well it stands up, and what ended up winning in the overall poll was how many people should, or rather, can the Starship carry reasonably? And however, this can also be extended to how many people could we reasonably feed? How do we feed 1 million people on Mars? That sort of thing. I think that it's important that we address all the aspects of colonizing Mars. Just to make sure that, I mean, I know I discussed a lot of it in the video, but still, I think it's a good idea just for us to have kind of an open discussion on what the challenges might be, the pitfalls, that sort of thing. And, make sure we're not tricking ourselves, make sure we're not fooling ourselves about this concept. So in any event, we don't seem to have a lot of people online in the questions and answers section. Folks may be running a bit late at the moment. However, those of you who have tuned in, thank you very much for doing so. We have a lot of people who are tuned in, over 100 at the moment. And, when it comes down to it, I'll be happy to just talk about the subject myself if it comes down to that. Unfortunately, I don't have the ability to reopen the chat. Usually, I have a lot of people who show up. Kim Stanley Robinson's Mars trilogy, is that red Mars, green Mars, blue Mars? Is that the one that we're talking about there? I'm not certain if that's the case or not. Okay, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I am familiar with that. And although it's been I don't know how many decades since I've read it, it's been a really, really long time. But yeah, it kind of goes through the process, the stages of colonization from the very first mission that goes to Mars. One of the big things that I remember is a Russian woman, a middle-aged Russian woman with a backhoe, digging down into the regolith to get sufficient protection from the radiation and such, digging a habitat. I also remember another Russian who is in the radiation shelter during a solar storm while they're en route to Mars, and he's bouncing around inside of the shelter, and they ask him what he's doing, and he says, I'm giving him a moving target." So anyway, so yeah, it was written in the 90s, and there's a lot that we've learned about Mars since the 90s. And most of it actually is, positive stuff actually. We've learned that there's a lot more water on Mars than we ever thought. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a very dry place, but right beneath the surface there's a lot of water. There's a subsurface lake of ice that's the size of Texas. There's a water lake beneath one of the poles. There are incredible numbers of I'm thinking trillions of cubic kilometers, if I remember correctly, or at least billions of cubic kilometers of ice. I don't remember the exact figure, but it's a huge amount. If you were to melt the ice on the polar ice caps alone, you would have water covering the entire surface to a distance of about, or depth rather, of about a couple of feet. So of course, it would evaporate very quickly if you did that, but still, there's a lot of water there, a lot of water. Is it worth it to make a moon base before going to Mars? I don't know about a moon base, but I do think that we need to establish our presence on the moon. The lunar gateway, at the very least, the first modules of the lunar gateway scheduled for deployment in 2023. Who knows if that's actually going to happen? I certainly hope that it does. The Lunar Gateway is going to give us a lot of information as to how difficult it's going to be to travel in interplanetary space. There's no protection from our magnetic field, and so therefore we're going to be exposed to the same kind of radiation and cosmic rays that we would in interplanetary space. So this will give us the opportunity to test radiation shielding against cosmic rays, that sort of thing. I don't think it's any mistake, by the way, or any coincidence that Elon Musk and SpaceX are deploying the first two modules of that gateway, and that Elon is heavily involved in Artemis. Very, resupplying the station as well. I think that he's very interested in the results of what happens there, because that's going to give him a lot of information as to what's going to happen when he sends humans to Mars, which is one of the reasons why I don't think there's going to be a manned mission to Mars on Starship until 2028 at the earliest. I think we're going to need a few years on the moon before we attempt any sort of journey to Mars on the Starship. And the first one should not have a huge number of people. I'm thinking perhaps a dozen specialists or something like that. But I do believe that the idea should be that these specialists do not intend to come back. And, I think back to the National Geographic Mars series about this, when the leader, spoiler alert, who dies shortly after they land, but he gives a speech saying that if this is not the most important thing in your life, if there is something on earth that you value more, family or something else, then walk out that door and don't come back, and don't feel that we hold anything against you, because this has to matter to you more than anything, because you're never coming back. And I think that that really should be the idea that we have in mind, because I think the journey to Mars and then coming back is going to be extremely hard on the individuals who do it. 6 months in microgravity, a very long stretch in one third gravity, and then 6 months in microgravity again, and then going into 1G. That's going to be rough. No astronaut has ever endured that before. And I think that that's going to be, that alone is going to be difficult. Okay, M2 says dig mole holes, release gases to thicken the atmosphere. Yeah, well, I released a video not that long ago about the terraforming of Mars and the different methods that we would use, and we would have to use all of those methods in order to accomplish the terraforming of Mars. But there would be a lot involved in that. But that would certainly be the most challenging thing that, well, I'd say that mankind has ever done, trying to completely change the environment of a world. Very difficult. Okay, Timothy says, I think we could start infrastructure on Mars and Phobos in advance of any crewed mission. Yeah, I think that's a good idea too. It's what's called staging. I'm sure a lot of you have heard that term. We're doing it on the moon already, actually. And the Peregrine lander is going to be one of the first that's scheduled to go on a Vulcan rocket next year, although that's been pushed up now to late next year, and it's been pushed up by guess who? Yeah, Blue Origin. Because Blue Origin is providing the engines for the Vulcan Centaur, there are issues with those engines that are pushing up the launch. I found this out very recently, and it pisses me off that the ULA is not going to be able to launch that rocket as scheduled because of these doggone engines that Blue Origin is producing. I think they made a mistake by going that route. I really think they should have just stuck with gone with SpaceX, or if they really didn't want to go with SpaceX, they could have gone with Aerojet Rocketdyne, and they probably would have had this done a lot quicker. Put tons of equipment there beforehand, says Sigmund. Yeah, absolutely. We need a lot of stuff on a lot of infrastructure there. The idea of going to Phobos initially with a crewed expedition, the rationale behind that is many-fold. But one of the main advantages is that the people on Phobos can control the robots that are building habitation, building all of this infrastructure that we would need beforehand in real time, that it wouldn't be delayed by 4 to 15 minutes or whatever, 20 minutes sometimes, by light delay time, that you could actually control the machines in real time, at least while Phobos was visible in the sky and it orbits the planet twice a day. So that would be one of the big reasons to go to Phobos, amongst many others. It probably is comprised of a great deal of water ice itself, and so you can and carbon too, so you can make a ton of methalox fuel there. I'm talking millions and millions of tons of methalox fuel on Phobos, so there's a lot of reasons for that. We'll definitely need those gravity adjustment medications from the Expanse, says Cully. Yeah, I mean, if we're ever going to come back to Earth, yeah, there's gonna need to be a lot of adjustments made in that regard. And if we can't, then those who go to Mars really need to look at the possibility of not coming back. Now, that opens up, as I've said many times, it opens up the rest of the solar system if they don't come back, because the rest of the solar system, except for Venus, has, the same or less gravity than Mars does. So actually traveling to other places throughout the solar system, at least as far as the moons of the Jovian planets are concerned and the asteroids, none of these things would create a problem for that. Colonized Mercury says, is Phobos extremely low gravity, too low to build Mars base Alpha? Actually, there was a university project put together and funded by NASA to do precisely this. And the idea is to have modules similar to space station modules. You shoot tethers into the surface of Phobos and slowly kind of ratchet it down to the surface, so it's tethered to the surface of Phobos. So yeah, full scale conventional construction is impossible. However, if you pre-build the modules and then have them, tethered and slowly descend down to the surface, then yeah, they can be established that way. And any ship that goes to dock, so to speak, at Phobos wouldn't actually be docking. It would be orbiting or close by, and then you would have some sort of transfer cable or some other system between the base and the ship landing a ship on Phobos would be way too tricky. It would be just unnecessary. There are many other ways to do it. And the Japanese have recently proved that you can put something down on Phobos and then bring something, or rather from an asteroid and bring something back. An asteroid that has lower gravity than Phobos does. But nevertheless, it is challenging. But yeah, that's the trick. Pre-build the modules and have them tethered to the surface, and then just kind of ratchet them down to the surface is the way of doing it. Johnny says, I think terraforming Mars would be a waste of good resources. That's entirely possible. Maybe, maybe we just don't do that. We don't change the planet. Maybe there's no sense. By the way, real quick, almost 200 people watching. Thank you so much for tuning in. Once again, you know how to be a part of this conversation, although I'm going to have other live streams where I'm going to start opening things up. It's in the description on how to become part of this channel, part of our little community. $3 a month, 75 cents a live stream. It's pretty inexpensive, and there are other benefits as well, like exclusive stuff. But yeah, Johnny, there's an argument to be made for it because it's going to take a lot of effort and a lot of resources to do it. So yeah, and then it would have to be constantly maintained too. The solar winds would try to strip away the atmosphere just like they did before, so it would need to be stripped away. People who say we can't change Mars climate but rant about how we change our own. Yeah, and too, I made that argument actually in the video that I made, that it seemed hypocritical that we can change our own climate here on Earth and not change the climate on another planet. Frankly, I think we can do both. And Earth's climate, Earth's atmosphere is much, much bigger than Mars' atmosphere. If we can change that, then definitely. Colonize Mars. Could we fly airships on Mars, and what gas would you use? The answer to your question, Colonize, is yes. And the answer to what gas? Nothing. You would use vacuum. It is the best solution that's been put forward so far. What you do is you suck all of the air out of an airship, and that is what makes it lighter than the extremely thin atmosphere of Mars. Now, there's been some theories talked about with maybe hydrogen being lighter or something like that. But really, if you make it a vacuum balloon, a vacuum airship, that would probably be the best. And frankly, I think that that's what they should have sent to Mars on our rover, or rather our rover recently, is a small little vacuum balloon kind of airship to test there instead of a helicopter. The helicopter, we're trying to defy the nature of Mars. We're trying to defy how thin that atmosphere is. And that's going to be a very difficult thing to do. Whereas if we use, an airship with a vacuum sealed balloon, and like I say, look that up. It has been proposed. It's a very interesting topic, and I talked about it a little bit in a video that I did about Venus, about establishing a colony there. Maybe we shouldn't think about changing the planet, but instead of changing ourselves, says Cully. Some radical changes in biotechnology could change the landscape. Yes, that's been talked about quite a bit. Of course, we're going to need a lot more in the way of genetic engineering in order to change ourselves, if that's what's necessary. But once again, you change yourself to be adaptable to Mars, and then Earth becomes your planet that is alien to you. So I don't know. I'm not certain if that's the best way or not. This is why we have these discussions. I would prefer colonize Mercury. Says I would prefer colonizing Venus over terraforming Mars. Venus has a similar gravity to ours. Yeah, there's a lot of positives for colonizing Venus. The biggest problem that I have with colonizing Venus is the almost complete lack of water, as far as we know. The only way that we can make water, as far as we know, on Venus is to convert the sulfuric acid into potable water, which would be an unbelievably difficult and energy intensive task. And we need water in very large quantities. So to maintain a large colony on Venus would be, I mean, importing huge amounts of water would be really difficult. Although who knows, Mars has a very low gravity well, so maybe they could chuck, huge icebergs at Venus, or something along those lines to help supply them. But yeah, Venus has a similar gravity. They also have a very dense atmosphere. Even in the upper layers of the atmosphere, provides great protection against radiation because of the pressure at that level, about 50 kilometers up, I think, or something. Then you don't if your suit gets a tear, you're not going to die immediately. You have plenty of time to get to help without decompression. So yeah, there's a lot of positives to colonizing Venus. It's just that lack of water that I have a problem with. We humans really need water, really, really badly. And that's what makes that one kind of tough. Um, Okay, so a much more efficient way of going about it. People have this weird thing about walking around on the surface of something. Yeah, well, we won't be able to walk around the surface of Venus, not unless we terraform it. It's one of the most horrific, most hell-like planets, as Carl Sagan would have said, in the solar system. And yeah, I mean, plus there may be microbial life in the clouds. There's a lot of things to discover, but I'm from my own personal prejudices. I would much rather see Olympus Mons, the Valles Marineris, and all the other incredible geological wonders on Mars. Of course, I love the deserts of Arizona and New Mexico. I feel very at home in places like that. So that might be why I like it so much. So yeah, that's why I like Mars and exploring that more so than Venus. That's just a personal prejudice, though. Okay, so Sigmund says if the Mars samples return and they find life on Mars, should we colonize or leave the microbes alone? Sigmund, yeah, I've said this a number of times. We should colonize. We don't have to, in my opinion, we don't have to leave the microbes alone because I don't think we can hurt the microbes. The microbes on Mars have survived radiation, extreme cold, near vacuum conditions, and perchlorates can kill almost all forms of bacteria on Earth, with only a few exceptions. And so, as a result, I think that Mars's microbes would survive anything we could throw at them. I think they do just fine. As a matter of fact, I think it would be in our interest to help these microbes flourish, give them nutrients, help them grow, because they produce carbon dioxide when they're provided with nutrients, or at least they did when the Viking expedition fed nutrients into its samples. Viking 1 and 2 did the same thing. And you've heard me talk about this a million times. We found life on Mars in 1976. The entire scientific team that was behind that experiment believes it. It's just our narrow-mindedness that doesn't allow us to admit it. But there's life on Mars and widespread too, because the same results happened with Viking 1 and 2. I think that we can go there, and the microbes, I think, are going to do just fine in spite of our presence. The only thing that perhaps worries me is what happens if they're dangerous to us. What happens if they could be infectious? What happens if they could be a new kind of disease? That is something that needs to be taken very seriously. Alien Zookeeper says, I wonder if a Martian carbon monoxide furled SSTO is possible. Would not need to find water first or bring hydrogen. Yeah, that's a possibility. Very interesting idea. Fueled, yeah, not furled, fueled, sorry. Carbon monoxide, that's a very interesting concept. Would not need to find water or bring hydrogen. I do think there's so much water there, though. I could be wrong, but everything that we've looked at so far in our orbital studies indicate that water ice is there by the millions, if not billions, of cubic kilometers, not tons, cubic kilometers of ice. So I think there's lots of water on Mars, just lots of it. But yeah, there's, like I say, there's lots of ways to skin this cat. Yeah, so yeah, and Cully, yep, yeah, you said pretty much what I did. Bruden 62, what are the calculations we have for food waste? Basically, the astronauts do for 6 months, experiments limited for 100 people. And this, when I did this video recently, which has been very popular, it's, I do actually agree with somebody who's going to remain unnamed that 100 people are too many. The sheer amount of food, water, and other necessities, mass wise, for that many people for 6 months, it's like barely within the scope of what's possible. And there are a lot of other things that we're going to need besides all that. However, he does make a point that we're also going to need 100 environmental suits, which weigh a huge amount each, in 100 rather, full scale space suits. This may sound crazy, but that isn't actually necessary. And I forgot to put that in the video. I would say we need about 10. And the reason for that is we need 10 just for the highly specialized people that might have to do an EVA on the way to Mars. But once you get there, you can have the spacesuits waiting for the colonists and just bring them, have the people who are suited up bring them into the ship. You don't have to make all of those spacesuits as part of the cargo. It's not necessary. And if you had some sort of disaster which provided explosive decompression that affected the entire ship to where everybody would need its full-fledged spacesuit to survive, that means you're dead meat anyway. You're not going to survive that. And a disaster of that level would not be enough. My view is more like 50. I'm thinking that 50 makes a lot, 50, 60, something like that. The numbers work out a lot better. So But, yeah, absolutely experiments should be done. At the same time, though, we do need to make sense. We do need to remember, and this is something that I brought up in my most recent video, that on the HMS Victory, we had 800 people crammed onto that ship, and they didn't go slaughtering each other. Now, granted, they were under very strict military discipline, but still, 800 people crammed onto that ship. So, it's not really 50, 60 people on the Starship for 6 months. It'll be tough. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but certainly doable. Certainly doable. Digging under makes plenty of sense. Yeah, Claire, we've kind of gone back and forth about that. I do think that natural light is kind of important to human sanity. Other people may feel otherwise, but I think that seeing the natural landscape around you, there's so many designs that NASA has done for these 3D printed habitats on the surface that are protected from radiation and yet have lots of windows to where you can look at the surroundings, look at the sky, look at the blue sunsets. That sort of thing would be very, very helpful to the human psychiatric condition. Now, that's just my opinion, though. Living underground may work out just fine for a lot of people, but psychologically, like the coal miners, for example, in West Virginia, or in Cumberland, in England, it's a lot of them suffered tremendously psychologically from being underground all the time. So it really varies. Do I like Arizona desert? Bruden 62. Do I like Arizona desert because of the heat? No, I don't. To answer your question, very very good question. No, actually, I like the Arizona desert because of the surroundings and the gorgeous geological beauty of the region. And Mars has that, times 100, especially in the Valles Marineris. Being fully clothed and helmeted at all times and without the ability to walk outside without a complete suit. Nothing beats bare feet on a warm beach. That's true, Bruden 62. You're right. There are some things that would have to be given up. Now, these huge biodomes that have been proposed, this is a ways in the future that would actually have little lakes and things like that, paths that you could walk around without being in a suit, that kind of thing. That could create a small terraformed kind of environment, but still it's not the same as Earth. But and frankly, for somebody who can't give that up, and that's most of human beings, I think, Mars is not for them. Mars is not for the majority of people. It isn't. It's going to be a very tough experience, and you have got to be motivated by two things. Number one, the desire to explore, and number two, the desire to preserve and sustain the human species with a second home for the human race. And those things have to matter to you more than anything else. And that's not the majority of people. And that's fine. I'm totally cool with that. That makes perfect sense. It would be a very, very difficult thing. Not for everybody at all. But it doesn't have to be for everybody. We're talking 1 million people here. That's a fraction of 1% of the population. So less than 1/10 of 1% of the population, actually. So how many people should go on the first mission to Mars, in my opinion, says Timothy? I'd say about a dozen or so. A number of specialists definitely need somebody with medical skill. That would be a must. But a geologist, exobiologist, people who have survival skills, those sorts of things. Definitely mechanical engineering, robotics. There's so many different specialties, and I think every one of them should be covered. So like a botanist, for example, we definitely need that botanist. That's going to be very important. Um, how long are the sleep cycles getting, says Cully. Um, that's a good question. If you're talking 50 or 60 people, the sleep cycles should be roughly the same. We don't really need to adapt to a different sleep cycle because Mars has the same length of day, close to it anyway, as Earth does. So it can be similar. Now, if we cram 100 people, I think that's asking for trouble. I do think that that's true. But, we can get somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 or 60 and be fine. And I think the sleep cycles can be rough, can be similar. At the same time, it's also dangerous to compare the life of a colonist who's going on a starship to the life of an astronaut. It's not going to be the same. Astronauts have very, very rigorous work schedules. Now, everybody will have to work out 2 hours a day, but all these astronauts are constantly working on maintaining the ISS and doing experiments like constantly. They get a little bit of rest periods in between and that sort of thing, but they have to work a lot. And whereas the people who are going to be making the transition, that's going to be a tough 6 months because a lot of them aren't going to have as much to do. Colonized Mercury says it makes physical sense, but psychological, it'd be more stressful that living on the surface than living on the surface. We need to have both underground areas that will survive dust storms, true. Meteorites and allow large areas without excess infrastructure costs. Quite partial to Tucson, Arizona. Yeah, I'm going to be going there actually not too long from now. So I'm pretty excited about all that. But yeah, I just love the desert, but no, it has nothing to do with the heat. As far as temperature is concerned, I like Britain. I like Great Britain and Scotland. In the spring, when it's actually quite chilly, so I don't mind the heat in Arizona. It's a dry heat compared to here, but still not quite the same thing. Okay, Coyer, on a submarine for years in the U.S. Navy. Thank you for your service. It's amazing how much you can do in a small amount of living space. Just pick your people well. Very good point. Very good point. Living on a submarine, and yeah, you guys, especially in the nuclear subs, which comprise, I think, the majority of the U.S. Navy. Anyway, they're underwater for months at a time, and don't go crazy and don't start killing themselves or others. It's military discipline. So you have to pick your people well. Yep, I agree. You do. I think it's going to take extensive psychiatric screening to make sure that these people get by okay. Bruden62 says, do I think NASA will want constant video feed from Mars in case something happens? I think they'd want a constant video feed, but mostly just to study what's going on. There'll be very little that they can do to help in case anything should go awry. But at the same time, I think that they, these people are going to have to be very self-sufficient. But all of that having been said, yeah, live video feed is going to be good for a lot of things. I think people would like to watch a live video feed of a lot of these people, see what's going on Mars, get people excited about space. I think that would be a fantastic thing. The Expanse has an interesting idea on how to build housing on Mars. Says Sigmund, hollowed out mountains. Yes, that's actually a really there's a very strong argument for that one. Olympus Mons, and there, by the way, lots and lots and lots of volcanoes on Mars that are colossal, and they have lava tubes. Those lava tubes possibly have a lot of water ice, but we're not certain about that. If they do, then they're ideal places for colonization, especially if you can drive shafts up to the summits of these volcanoes, because they're most of them, if not all of them, are higher than Everest. What a view! I mean, can you imagine? Only a very select few people on Earth get a chance to see this planet from the vantage point of Mount Everest, and I think that would be something else. Timothy, yes, I have started watching season 5. Oh my lord, yeah, it's super cool. And of course, a lot of us knew what was about to happen in the most recent episode. I'm not going to do any spoilers here, but wow, that's this is going to be cool. This is going to be cool. M2 says season 4 sucked and the new eps were much better. Season 4 did drag a bit. There were some exciting moments in it, but yeah. One of the problems I think with season 4, now I'm reviewing the Expanse, was the fact that, okay, what are we going to do with now we're expanding to other planets outside the solar system? It's kind of going beyond the scope of what the Expanse was, what we found so fascinating about it, which was life in the solar system, without faster than light travel. Now we have a new environment where there are planets elsewhere, where we can go to other stars, just like in every other sci-fi series. So it isn't as unique as it used to be as a result. And I know that's how the books go and all that sort of thing, but still, focusing. Yeah, I agree. Focusing on an off-world colony, it wasn't that great. Although I have to admit, I am intrigued by a lot of things when it comes to the aliens and that sort of thing. Aliens never seem to have seem to be very safe, do they? They all seem to have it out for us one way or another, even unintentionally. they have it out for us. All the way back to the Andromeda strain, it was suggested that the microbe in the Andromeda strain, or the virus or whatever, was designed perhaps as a way of saying hi. Maybe it wasn't lethal where it was from. But it turned out to be very, very lethal to us. That sort of thing. So, it's I guess it's just not very entertaining when the aliens are out for our good rather than trying to kill us. So, well, what can you do? It makes for better television. If the aliens are out to kill us, by the way, we've had it. We're screwed. If they want to wipe us out anyway, an alien species with the ability to travel interstellar will have a very easy time of just taking a bunch of asteroids and crashing them into our planet and killing us all. If their intention was simply to kill us, that would be the easiest way to do it rather than coming down with a bunch of ray guns. Okay, so off of that topic, we got some more questions. Anyone know if Musk's plan for going to Mars has altered, or is it Mars Direct still? Could Phobos be a mini Starship first destination? Who knows what Elon Musk is thinking about these sorts of things. His plans change all the time. His timelines change all the time. It's something that we've all gotten used to with this guy. It just simply changes on a regular basis, and either you have a problem with the guy because of it or you don't. But I do think that he is behind the whole moon first idea. I think that's why he's supporting the Lunar Gateway, and Artemis has so much invested in it. I think that that's going to help him with colonizing Mars. At the same time, though, I think that he does intend to start sending starships, at least unmanned starships, to Mars as soon as he possibly can. If I were in charge of colonization effort to Mars, what would I send first? Oh boy. Self-sustaining habitats, that would be critical. Very critical. And so, these 3D printed habitats, and also greenhouses, aquaponics, that sort of thing, which would all have to be built by robot. That would be very, very challenging. But at the same time, I think that's what would have to go to Mars first. We need a place to live. We need a place to survive. Theoretically, we could survive inside the starships, but frankly, I think after 6 months of living in these things, we're going to be sick of it, and I think that we're going to want something else to live in. And a lot of these 3D printed structures that have been proposed using mostly Martian materials are really cool the way they're designed. Some of the best architects in the world have worked on these things, and I've done a number of videos about them. So, habitation plus food, obviously, water ice drilling, automated water to make sure that we're going to be able to do it. Those sorts of things are all very important. So there's a lot that I would send first to make sure that at least a small group of people are going to be able to survive when they get there. And if greenhouses become too complicated, then send a whole lot of emergency rations, that sort of thing. Who do I hate more, Blue Origin or Boeing? That says colonize Mercury. Boy, that's a tough question. Kind of outside the scope, but I'd say it's a tie, really. Boeing has done some very good things. So in their past, I can't take that away from them. But at the same time, right now, they are endangering human space flight with a lot of what they're doing. The SLS and the extreme cost and delays are endangering Artemis, and the Starliner has proven itself, at least thus far, to be an unreliable and extremely faulty ship that could very well kill astronauts on board. And if something like that happens, then we're back to the Challenger explosion days. I've got problems with all of that, But Blue Origin, on the other hand, has done a lot of things that annoy me too. So yeah, it's a tough one. I'd have a hard one with that. 12 people on the first trip on the previous show, all males, says Bruden62. No. 6 men, 6 women. Definitely. We have to see whether men and women are going to be able to cooperate on in a self-sustaining colony, and we have to see that early on. We have to see what the dynamics of these sorts of things, relationships, whatever crop up. We need to have it split in half. And I mean, not necessarily set up to be couples right off the bat, but I think that we do need to make sure that the genders are equally represented, because they're going to have to be in a colony. And so we need to see early on how those dynamics work, if they work badly, if they work well, that sort of thing. That's one of the problems that we have in Antarctica, is the fact that the vast majority of the people there are men. And so the women there have claimed that they are expected basically to put out for somebody, and they feel awful and put upon and that sort of thing. And so, we need to see how all of this is going to work. And I do think that women need to be equally represented. And so, therefore, we need to get, women more enthusiastic about being astronauts. Right now, they're still not equally represented, although the latest graduating class from NASA looks encouraging, looks a lot more encouraging. So yeah, that's my opinion. We need to see what that dynamic is going to look like early on, and we don't need 10 guys and 2 women, and a lot of jealousy and stuff like that either. Will they all be Americans, says Bruden62? I hope not. I think that they should be represented from a lot of different nations, because, a Martian colony is going to be comprised of a lot of different nations. We need to see how that dynamic works. There could be issues, I suppose, with, technology and that sort of thing, but being stolen or whatever. But, I mean, we have, folks from the ESA going up in Japanese and all the, on the ISS all the time, and Russians obviously too. So I would say that it should be multinational as well, because a Martian colony will be multinational. And so therefore we have to see how that dynamic works. Female bodies are better at space travel. I don't know about that. I haven't read any of it. I mean, they weigh less. That is one advantage, is that there's not going to be as much mass. They consume less food, and less water. There are some advantages there. And so therefore they're not going to need as much, there isn't going to need to be as much mass reserved for a female astronaut as opposed to a male astronaut. But there are unique problems for female astronauts, says Avinash. It's true in microgravity, pregnancy, estrogen, bone loss, bone health. That is very true. However, Christina Koch, who's one of my heroes, she has gone to microgravity for a full year and come back, and seems to be doing very well. At least everything that I've seen. I've followed her career fairly closely. And she's done really well after coming back. So really it depends on the person. And that's a full G, by the way, not 1/3 G that she had to adjust to. So yeah, and of course, one of the big negatives is that women should not be exposed to as much radiation as men because of the pregnancy issues and that sort of thing. That is something that is kept, in fact, the ESA has even said that women shouldn't go to Mars because of that. That's a crazy overreaction, in my opinion. Because I've studied the maximum number of rads that a woman should absorb in her lifetime. I actually did an episode on it. I'm not going to go into detail on it right now. You can watch the video, ways that Mars can kill you and why radiation won't. And I talk about a 35-year-old woman living out her life on Mars, and how that would work out. And it would work out. Now, a woman in her 20s, that might be a lot tougher, being exposed to radiation for a longer period of time. But in your 30s, it might not be so bad. Claris is not certain how much your nation of origin matters once you're on Mars, unless you plan to come home. That's true. I think that Martian, independence should be established as soon as possible. That whole little thing that's in the Starlink contract, and most of you probably know about that, to where we acknowledge the independence of Mars. That's in your contract if you sign up for Starlink. It's very interesting. But I do believe that separated by tens of millions of kilometers from Earth, Martians don't need to be. Once they become self-sufficient, once they're self-sufficient, Martians don't need to be answerable to human governments. I really don't think that they need to be, because they're the ones who are putting up with all of this, with this difficult life and this risk of death. And so as a result, I think that they should have their independence. Highly skilled international couples would be ideal. That is an interesting idea. It depends on how well those couples are getting along by the time they leave. But yeah, that is a very interesting idea. Um, the Brood 62 is talking their biology every month hasn't been an issue, but it hasn't been on the ISS. Yeah, so far women have been doing very well. Female astronauts have done quite well on the ISS. There hasn't been a single issue that has come up. So in any event, that's an interesting one. But so far there hasn't been any problems between men and women on the ISS, as far as we know. The urine filtration systems cannot handle menstrual fluid. There are issues. That's interesting. Very interesting. I did not know that. And so then we have a link that's just been put onto here about women astronauts and how they prefer to suppress their periods entirely. Very interesting. Perhaps necessary for a 6-month journey. That is very interesting. Now, I'm sure that, technologically, eventually we can do something about it. Will the first people, Bruden 62, will the first people to Mars ever come back? I would say the longer they stay on Mars, the more difficult it's going to be, to be extremely difficult, to come back, unless we can find some sort of artificial gravity to run on Mars, constantly. Coming back to Earth is going to be a tough thing indeed, for Martians. So, but once again, they've got the whole rest of the solar system to work with here, not just Mars. So there's a lot there. To avoid major issues with couples, just make the entire group polygamous or non-monogamous. Oh boy. Well, I know some folks who are into polyamory. And it doesn't, it may work out sometimes for some people, but for a lot of people, it doesn't work out. I'll tell you, eventually something comes up with all of these polyamory kind of relationships. But I've known some people who've done that. By the way, we have almost 300 people watching. Thank you so much. I appreciate you tuning in. Once again, you know how to be part of this discussion. It's all in the description, to join as a Patreon supporter, to become part of the Discord community. I would love it if you were to do that. It can be as cheap as $3 a month, and I do a lot of these live streams. And as you know, at least half of them, and probably more, are going to be, at least in terms of the discussion, are going to be involved with the folks who are part of the Discord community. You'd probably want to take colonized Mercury says you probably want to take hormonal birth control the entire time on the Starship ride for no chance of pregnancy while in space. Yeah, I would agree with that. Pregnancy in space would be a very bad thing the fetus, or anything like that. And also, there's a lot of arguments that that pregnancy would be impossible in space. That sex in space would be impossible because of blood flow issues and stuff like that. Um, that other sorts of sexual stuff could happen, but not traditional kinds of sexual activity. And there have been all kinds of rumors that these sorts of things have actually happened on the ISS, but who knows? Who knows if that's actually true? Okay. The Nexus Aurora group just presented an abstract on on this. The long acting reversible contraception IUD or implant plus combined oral contraceptive for bone health. Very interesting. Very interesting. Maybe that's part of the solution. Especially the bone health part. That sounds very interesting. JFK on the moon. We know that Mars has a lot of iron. Does it have gold? Will there be a gold rush to Mars in the future if gold is found? I think it's more likely that we're going to have a gold rush to 16 Psyche in the asteroid belt. 16 Psyche is very rich in rare minerals and rare metals. Very, very rich in these things, some of which we are running out of on this planet. And so I think going there is going to be the gold rush. And as I've mentioned a number of times in the past, it is easier from a delta V standpoint for Martians to go to the asteroid belt than it is for humans to go to the moon. Now, that doesn't mean it's easier distance wise, but as far as delta V is concerned, because of the gravity, it's easier for Martians to go to the asteroid belt than it would be for humans to go to the moon. So I do think that that it's going to require, or rather, I do think that Martians, if they have a self-sustaining colony, they're the ones who are going to be getting themselves incredibly rich off of the asteroid belt. Send 4 females and 1 male to Mars to propagate the species. 4 males to 1 female. You're starting to sound like Dr. Strangelove. What did he say? 10 females to each male. I would say propagating the species is impossible without at least a genetic diversity of about 156 people is what the estimate has been. And just to be safe, you want to have 300 to 400 people in order to have sufficient genetic diversity to propagate the species for the survival of the species. That's what's necessary. So what do you do on Mars for fun? Saturday night roll around, there you are on Mars. Rolls around on Mars, there you are. What then? You know what, Coyer? I listed a lot of things on my most recent videos. You know, with all the water ice, you could take a swim. I think the first person who makes an indoor swimming pool on Mars is going to become a very wealthy person on Mars. That's one thing. There are lots of things that somebody could do that could be quite exciting on Mars, depending on your EVA experience. They have something called the bio suit that's being developed at MIT, which is more of a skin tight spacesuit, which is a lot more flexible, a lot easier to work with. And, strolling outside might actually be a lot easier than we would think. For me, I would want to be established and have to be living in a city or in a community that's in the Valles Marineris and to explore it, even just walk outside and just look around at whatever happens to be in my region. Um, they're going to have rovers that can travel for very large long distances rather. I think that all of those things, just the excitement of exploring this new world is going to be unbelievably exciting to the average person. Now, as far as other stuff is concerned, why can't we have the rest of it? There could be bars. I mean, why couldn't there be bars? The again, in my last episode, I talked about the problem with wheat, but there's no reason why you can't grow grain using aqua, or not grain, but grapes using aquaponics, and then you have wine, that sort of thing. Why couldn't you have a wine bar? In fact, they have that in the Expanse, Martian vintages of wine and that sort of thing. Why couldn't there be bars and that sort of thing? I would say that a lot of stuff you do on Earth can be done there. It's human psychology. As far as the female to male ratio, yeah. Timothy says, I would prefer if there are a lot of silver veins. We're starting to run out on Earth. We consume so much silver in our industries. Very good point, Timothy. And there's a hell of a lot of silver on 16 Psyche. A lot. And we're going to find out exactly how much when we send that probe, which launches in 2022 on a Falcon Heavy by amazing coincidence. That SpaceX is sending this probe out to the asteroid belt. We're going to find a lot of resources on that asteroid, and that could be the salvation of our civilization, is all the rare minerals, because all that asteroid is a failed planet, a failed planetary core, very much like ours, that seems to have lots of iron and lots of other kinds of metals, including rare metals. So 16 Psyche, amongst others, there are other asteroids like 16 Psyche, but 16 Psyche is the mother lode. That is where the vast majority of some of the most valuable mining can be done. Okay, we've got about another 15 minutes or so. I was going to cut things a little short today just because I did one of these yesterday as well. And I have to admit, I'm fading. 1/3 gravity golf. Wow, that would be cool. 1/3 gravity sports of all kinds. Oh yeah, and one thing, and some people have poo-pooed this idea, but I think it's an amazing thing, is the regolith. There's lots of dust, meters of dust on Olympus Mons, on the foothills of Olympus Mons. Snowboarding or dust boarding down the slopes of Olympus Mons would be an experience beyond all belief, zooming down the slopes of that. And once again, there's lots of dust, not a lot of rocks to crash into or anything like that. They could actually set up sort of dust slopes, ski slopes, that sort of thing, remove the rocks and the other debris that could be dangerous, that could rip your suit, that sort of thing, to where when you do wipe out, you'll wipe out on dust and you're not going to rip your suit doing that. And then the tricks that you could perform in 1/3 gravity that snowboarders do here, my God, what they could do there. That would be an amazing thing. Would Martians likely develop their own unique language, especially if they're international couples? Maybe. The longer that they get separated from our civilization here, they may develop their own language, like the Belters. Yes, the Belters, they're cool. They are so cool. They can be real jerks sometimes, but at the same time, you can hardly blame them, because Earth has been exploiting the hell out of them in that series. But they are cool. The Belters are, I must say, they are neat. Can we use the perchlorates for anything, says Colonized Mercury? Yes, we can. We can use the perchlorates. There is a type of bacteria on our planet that eats perchlorates and produces oxygen as a byproduct. And you can use the enzymes from these bacteria to break down perchlorates and produce oxygen. As a matter of fact, the people who wrote a paper about this, and I did a video about this topic as well, is Elon sending us to colonize a poisoned world, I think is what I called it, or something. But they did a proof of concept of an emergency oxygen system where you put a few kilograms of the Martian regolith into a bag and have the enzymes break down the perchlorates perchlorates, and it produces an hour's worth of emergency oxygen. So yes, we can use the perchlorates for something. And by the way, there's more oxygen in the Martian atmosphere than we thought there should be. We discovered that very recently, and a lot of you have seen that in the news. Is there an organism there already that eats the perchlorates, producing oxygen as a byproduct? Kind of seems like a no-brainer to me. And if there isn't, we can introduce it and start producing lots of oxygen that way. So yeah, we can use the perchlorates. Segment says, I hope to God there be some kind of socialist or collective political system up there, not rugged individualism like certain places. Everybody needs to be on the same page and work together. Yeah, Elon advocates direct democracy since we can all vote online, that sort of thing, especially in a smaller community to make decisions, that sort of thing. Everybody is going to have to work together, though. We won't survive otherwise. There's going to have to be a lot of collaboration in order to survive. It's going to be the most dangerous environment that mankind has ever been in. It's just, I mean, a place where you can't breathe, that's real dangerous. Danger of fire, that sort of thing. People are going to have to work together if they're going to survive. And that's why I think there's going to be a different breed of human being that goes there, because you're not going to go there to get rich. You shouldn't anyway. You're going there to explore and to sustain the future of humanity. So 1/3 gravity off. The greens are terrible. Need water. Yeah, the greens would be tough. I don't play golf, so I wouldn't know what to say in that regard. You'd surprise see more of a mix. Some colonies going collectivist, others going capitalist. Yeah, that could be too. That could be too. You could have differing points of view. Can you imagine Trumpists on Mars? Make Mars great again. Who knows? It depends on what making Mars great again means. I'm not going to get political about this. All I can say is that the whole thing, the whole Artemis thing, Pence has done a lot of good stuff in getting Artemis going. So I'm definitely in favor of that. Okay, we've got maybe 5-10 minutes left at this point. Would any gases we produce in the Martian atmosphere simply leave the planet's square? Yes, it would be eventually stripped away by the solar winds. It wouldn't leave. Martian gravity can sustain it, but eventually it would be stripped away by the solar winds. That's how we feel anyway, is that as the Mars core stopped creating a magnetic field, then the solar winds started ripping away the atmosphere until we lost it all. Magnetic field satellites, a lot of people have talked about that. Let's create our own magnetic field for Mars. That would be a huge engineering endeavor, to say the least. But maybe, or put something at Lagrange point 1 between Mars and the sun to provide some protection from the solar radiation, solar winds. That would be another possibility. A lot of people have talked about that. So yeah. Who would I pick to run NASA after Bridenstine leaves? Boy, that's a tough one. I would have a Kathy. Is it Loiters? Looters? Loiters, I think. I would put her in charge. I think she knows what she's doing. I would say that she would be a good choice, and she's one of Bridenstine's people, and we keep things going on the same path. Hello, Tishman. I don't know if you're new or not, but if you are, welcome. Which material from Mars would be used to construct domes, tools, etc.? A combination of the regolith, a regolith-based cement, and basaltic fiber. Mars had a very active volcanic past. And so it has a lot of basalt on the surface, and you can manufacture basaltic fiber out of it. It's nearly as good as carbon fiber. So those are the two main things that you would use from Mars to construct it. And then as far as the domes, the transparencies are concerned, it would be silica aerogels. There's a lot of silica in the Martian crust, just like in our own. And so you can make silica aerogel there. And so you can have these transparent domes that actually, at least so far from the experiments that have been done with solar energy that would be the equivalent of that on Mars, it would create enough warmth on its own for photosynthesis to occur without having to be warmed by artificial means. Amazing, but true. Silica aerogel is some pretty amazing stuff, and you can make it out of Martian materials. It also provides protection from radiation, not complete protection, but protection. So that's another thing. So yes, you are new from the Netherlands. Well, thank you so much. I do appreciate you. And by the way, the person who made this from Spaceship Mania, and you can see on most of my videos, I sell these things. He's Dutch too. But the 3D prints these really cool things that back there as well. That's 3D printed though, but this one, he prints this for you. You have to use Angry 10, however, in the when you order it to get a 10% discount. Angry 10. So okay, but that's enough of that. So okay, we have about 5 minutes or so left. If there's anything more that folks wish to contribute. But once again, this is great. I mean, we've talked a lot about, the different things that we need to consider when we're talking about colonizing another world, the challenges that are going to be, and there are going to be many challenges, but we humans are amazing creatures. We have phenomenal intellects, and our ability to overcome problems is, I mean, what problem have we put our minds to that we haven't been able to solve? Yeah, maybe not faster than light travel. Maybe we haven't figured that one out yet, but there's a lot of other things, definitely. Doing fan meetups after the beer mug goes away. Don't, maybe colonize Mercury. That might be a possibility. But then, the big question is where? Because more than half of my followers, more than half of the people who watch me are not Americans. So that would be an interesting question. Yes, we are just over 2,000 away from Bye Bye Boeing Cup. Yes, please subscribe. We have a lot of people watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Like and subscribe. I'd love it if you did. Thank you so much. We need to get to 40,000 to blow up the Boeing Cup, or to launch it or something along those lines. We're gonna make that happen very soon. And by the way, I have some merch out right now, some unique merch for the 40K thing that I'm going to take off of Teespring after 24 hours after I blow up the cup. So, and they're very cheap, by the way. They're just little like stickers, mugs, that kind of thing, but little commemorative things to like, I was there at the 40,000 point, that sort of thing. If you're interested, that's on there. And, it all helps the channel to grow. And what you guys have done already has been fabulous. So thank you so much for everything that you've done. I just hate cups, says Goyer. Actually, my inspiration came from a guitarist named Stevie T. Some of you may have heard of him. He has millions of followers, and my son loves him because my son is a great guitarist. He's really talented. Stevie T is a total goofball from Canada. He was trying to get to, I think, 3 million subs or something, and so he says, I'm going to kick this water bottle if you get to this or something. And so that's where I got my inspiration to blow up the Boeing Cup. Am I going to replace it with an Angry Astronaut Cup? Maybe, I might. It all depends. Just so you know, I have a new item on the way from Dynetics. I didn't even know it was coming, but I just got a notification in my email that it's being FedExed and it's arriving at my doorstep tomorrow. I can't wait. I'm not sure what it is. All I know is it weighs 2 pounds. I'm hoping that it's the alpaca. I'm hoping that they've made some kind of little model of the alpaca or something like that. That would be an amazing thing. They have talked about sending some swag my way in order to promote their human landing system. I can't wait to see what they're sending me. So stay tuned. I think it's going to be pretty cool. Oh, well, thank you, Timothy. Thank you so much for the Mars base alpha for making that for getting that. I am a, you know, it one of the reasons why I like it so much is it was designed by one of my supporters. The design, and he did do mission patches for Skyrora, which is a Scottish-based rocket company. So the Mars base alpha patch thing is something that I really like. I actually have ordered a sample of the hoodie for myself with a little patch and stuff, almost looking like a uniform. I'm a geek that way. I like to imagine that I'm on Mars base alpha or something like that. But yes, a nicely timed festive present from Dynetics. Swag. Yes, that's exactly how they put it. I'm gonna need a bigger boat, says Bruden62. Yes. By the way, that open space, as I mentioned before, I've got posters ordered for that. NASA posters, stuff about from Europa, those sorts of things. I can't wait to see some of that stuff as well. I think that that's going to add some more color to that open spot right there. It's about time for me to wrap up, guys. I really appreciate everybody tuning in. Once again, you know how to support this channel if you want to. If you're unable to, I understand, as I've said a million times, it's not your responsibility to pay my bills. Okay. So, but thanks for everything that you've done. Just leave me a like and subscribe, and I will be very thrilled. So, until we have overcome all of the problems that stand between us and establishing a colony on Mars, and we humans have accomplished amazing things in the past, and we will overcome this problem as well. I'm confident of it. I urge all of you to stay angry about space.